Tomorrow we're visiting Tiwanaku, but not on a regular traditional tour. We found a transportation only option where you board in La Paz. You get transportation to the Tiwanaku site. You are able to spend some time there, and then you get picked up later in the day. To me, this sounds absolutely perfect for a DIY traveler or a semi-DIY traveler, and we're going to test it out. But we honestly don't know how it's going to go. We don't know how exposed the area is. We don't know about food availability, if there's any shelter, how far it is from the ruins to the museums, what's going to be open, what's not going to be open. And so that's going to be part of the adventure. So we're taking you with us all the way from preparing tonight, the night before, making sandwiches, packing what we think we're going to need, seeing how the pickup and drop off and the process goes, and if this is a good idea or maybe not so good idea. So come along and we'll test it out. Let's get ready. I'm going to make a couple of sandwiches so we're not gone all day with no food options. A couple of ham and cheese sandwiches should do the trick.
So everything we've seen online or read, it looks like there's no trees, there's no food available, or maybe very limited, no water. Did I say no shelter? No. So we're packing as if there's no room for error. So
better to overpack and have it and maybe carry it around a little bit than to be out there baking in the sun at this altitude.
Except I have to carry it.
Well, you do have to carry it.
Okay, all right, we'll go anyway.
Sunglasses.
Absolutely. Sunscreen.
Water.
What else we got? Bring some umbrellas.
It's been raining and could also be for the sun.
Yep. To bring our dorky hats.
Dorky hats to save us from cancer later.
Sorry, we're taken.
And I never go anywhere without my valuable Rosita.
Dorky Rosita.
Well, maybe she's a little dorky, but she's mine.
We like her.
And of course, we'll grab the sandwiches out of the fridge and hopefully that'll do it. And since we're taking you along with us, you're going to see blow by blow what is available and what isn't available, and hopefully give you a little better idea.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll see.
Let's get this in the bag.
All right.
All right.
Okay, here we are heading off to our meeting point. So let's go.
Okay.
Okay, we made it to the Basilica Maria on time, and we're just waiting for our pickup, see if we can identify them, but we made it here. Okay, here's the point in the adventure where I think I need to give a little bit of background so you can understand the full picture before we continue with the tag along. Dean and I like to DIY our travels as much as possible. And this is really a personal, individual thing. The reason we like to DIY is, one, it keeps the costs down. And two, lots of times when you go on tours, you are really stuck with the time frame of the tour. While we were researching how to get there on our own via public transportation, we stumbled across a website called ticketsbolivia.com. And this is like any other type of website for figuring out bus routes and generally transportation, maybe train. something like Rome to Rio, if you've seen that. And so we were really excited. On the website, we plugged in that we're leaving from La Paz and going to Tiwanaku, and two choices popped up. One was Bull's Tours and one was Maya Tours. And yes, it does say tours in the name of the company, but I thought, hey, this is super clever. A tour company has figured out that there's people like me, the DIYers, that just want to get to the place and they want to have the assurance that they're going to get there, and they want to have a departure time, and then everything in the middle is up to them, but they know that they're going to get there and they know that they're going to have a ride home. There have been other times when we have DIY'd our way to ruins or an archaeological site, and things got really sketchy as far as trying to get home. If it's not super popular, there may not be taxis. And one of the ones that we went on, the normal scheduled bus just simply did not show up. And so this was very comforting that there were two companies and they had very similar itineraries. And so we thought, this is great. This is absolutely perfect. Somebody figured out how to schedule a route that fits the DIY group. The trip from Buo Tours was around $7, and for Maya it was around $14, and we chose the Maya. I came to the conclusion that one was $7 and one was $14 because one was one way and you had to buy two tickets, and the other one was round trip. I'm not exactly sure if that was correct, but that was my logic, and we decided to go with Maya Tours. When you click on the details or the additional information on the website, it indicates that Maya Tours will pick you up in La Paz, take you to Tiwanaku, and bring you back at 4 o'clock. This was perfect. There are no other details in the details section, so we assumed that that was what you got. And that's the information that we based the rest of our decisions on. Now, at this point, we're standing at the pickup location, and they're about 10 minutes late. So we got on our little WhatsApp app and contacted Maya Tours, and they sent us another person's information for the guide. And at this point, we started to get a little confused. So we stood there for a while, and Maya Tours was 20 minutes late for pickup. And then we spent the next hour and a half driving all around La Paz, picking up a bunch of people to fill the van, which was also very unclear in the little tiny 2-sentence details that it gave. It made it sound like there was a central pickup location and everybody was going to be getting on at that location. Now, I don't really know what's going on or what happened, but what I'm guessing happened is you can buy this on Tickets Bolivia, but there may be other places where you can also buy the same tour that we ended up on through other avenues. And so those tours may have offered hotel pickup. And so we had no idea, and I can't prove that this is what happened, but we had no idea that this was kind of a conglomerate of things being sold at different prices and with different rules. And so, it is what it is. And at that point, there's not much you can do. And so we sat on the bus, and an hour and a half later, we just started to leave La Paz. For the next part, I didn't do a lot of filming because a couple of reasons. What was unfolding was not what I expected, and so it was a bit confusing to be like, oh, I should be filming this. And I find it a little bit difficult / disrespectful / intrusive to just start filming people when they're talking and you don't really have permission, and it's uncomfortable. So most of this I did not film. But as we were driving, the tour guide introduced himself, and this is when we kind of started to put it together. Oh, we're on a tour. We're not on a transportation transfer type situation. And so the tour guide started talking about what we were going to do and what we were going to see, and that he needed to collect the money for the entrance to the Tiwanaku site, and he needed to collect money for lunch. And he told us what order things were going to go in. And so I asked him, can we just explore on our own and come back to the minivan at the designated time slot? And he said, no, that is not possible. And of course, since we packed our lunches and we're not expecting to have to pay, I asked him, well, when we break for lunch, are there other options that we can go to instead of the one that he's talking about, and just grab some soda pop or something like that and wait for the others? And again, he said, nope, that's impossible. There is no other food. Well, we didn't really care because we had food, but at this point, what are you going to do? The amount for the entrance is 100 Bolivianos, which we knew from checking out the Tiwanaku site. And the lunch that he was telling us was mandatory, except we had to pay for it, was about $6, and he touted it as a buffet. Well, for $6 and for $14 for the transfer, for the transportation, again, this is not huge money. It's just that it threw our day off. This is not what we thought was going to happen. And that's why I'm telling you. So that if you decide to go this route, or just for general information, that there's a lot of times when you see people visiting sites and this is so wonderful and this is an Instagram moment, and what might be going on behind the scenes might not be like that at all. Okay, so let's continue with our tour that we were on that we didn't know was going to be a tour. And the first stop was at the Stone Museum, the Rock Museum. And so it talked about how the temples were built, and there was a huge monolith of what the guide kept calling a shaman. And these were some of the most important and most impressive structures that were there. In the Stone Museum and in the Pottery Museum, photography is prohibited, so unfortunately we were not able to film anything in the museum. But it was a good start because it gave you a base understanding of what you were going to see and what it was like and what the time frame was. So I have to say, I do think it was a good place to start so that you were grounded and you had some knowledge before you went to the actual archaeological site. Okay, upon arrival, some of the things that we got right were it is very exposed. There are no trees, there's no shelter. Sometimes where there are high walls, you could possibly get in the shadow, the shade, a little bit. But overall, the site is very exposed, and we were very happy that we had sunscreen, dorky hats, and, spoiler alert, and the umbrellas. So the site is large, but it is certainly walkable and doable on your own from the amount of time that we thought we had, which was 11 to 4. If you do not have any mobility issues, this certainly would have been very walkable and very doable. And also, there is a town there. There are people who live there full time and conduct their lives. And there are little restaurants and there are little tienditas that have snacks and soda pop and juice and water and things like that. So if you go and you DIY it, be sure to have protection, but there are little places that you can certainly get things to eat and drink, and you can rest. And it's big. I mean, I'm not going to lie, but it is certainly walkable to go from Tiwanaku, the part of town where you could find something to eat and rest, and and also do the museums and the Puma Punku. It's all very doable in that time frame. And that's what I didn't know. I didn't know how vast this was, if it was, miles and miles between each one and not realistic, but it is very doable and realistic to walk if you don't have mobility issues. It isn't a lot of climbing, so you're not going to get pooped out trying to climb things. So at Tiwanaku, you will see some amazing things. There is the Sun Gate, which shows how important the site was to understand the seasons and the winter and the summer solstice. You'll see that lots and lots of places throughout Latin America, and it's always fascinating. There are also huge monoliths, not quite as many as I thought might be there, but it was very interesting nonetheless. And you will see the walls, the stone walls, the stone facade walls built up with these large stone pillars, and the sign that I read called this the wall of the tired stones. You can see that the pillars are natural, or seem to be. They haven't been worked or carved into circles or squares or columns. They just kind of it seems like they just took the big stones that they had available and made these the pillars. And that wall was really fun and fascinating. I always loved to see the scuppers, the way that they controlled and allowed for water flow and drainage. And probably the highlight that I wasn't expecting was a sunken courtyard with four walls, and you walk down into it, and built into the walls are these faces, and each face is unique. And from what I understand, these are faces of spirits. These are faces of loved ones who were no longer with the people there anymore, and they would help them communicate with the deities of the afterlife and make that connection between heaven and earth. Uh, that was fabulous. That was maybe my favorite part. It's all my favorite, I guess. And then after that, we went to the Pottery Museum, and again, no photographs were allowed, but the artifacts that were there were very informative, and there was English and Spanish in most of it, so you could also read what you were looking at and understand the use of bronze, the use of pottery, the artistic motifs that were there, why the shapes were what they were and what the vessels were used for. Really interesting. As a side note or a tip or maybe a pet peeve, one of the reasons that we balance our travels with some tours but mostly DIY is there's so many things that I'm interested in and I would like to spend more time, and that's not necessarily where the tour allows you to have a lot of time. And a lot of times I like to take photographs and videos, and of course the tour guide wants you to stand where he or she is standing. And I do love to listen because I want to learn and I want to know what I'm looking at. But then when they get done with their explanation, they frequently want to move on, and you haven't had enough time to absorb what they said to you and then go and take your photographs so that you can mesh the two together in your memory. And then there's the part about tours will often bring you to places that allow you to buy stuff. We travel full time and we slow travel. We're by nature, we're not shoppers and we're not buyers. We do not have any extra room in our luggage for souvenirs and tchotchkes, and it's just not our style. So the time, which is often lengthy, that they drop you off where you can buy things, that's the time I would like to have been able to spend actually spending time in the archaeological zones and observing the monoliths and seeing all the details and not shopping. So that's a big turnoff and downside to tours for us personally, but different people have different experiences and different desires of what they hope that the tour is like. So, as you can gather, the whole experience was not going how we thought it might go, and we thought we were pretty open minded to the little things that pop up that aren't pleasant, but you roll with them. But it just was a really tough pill to swallow. We were stuck on the time frame of a tour that we didn't know we were on. And although I feel bad for saying things about a tour guide that aren't flattering, the tour guide seemed like he was really not there. I'm sure he says the same things over and over and over, but there was not a lot of interaction. There wasn't much humor. He was very, very monotone in his delivery to the point where you just kind of tuned him out because so, and on top of that, of course, really, really trying to just embrace, okay, well, this is what's happening. No sense in being upset about it because let's not ruin the day by having a bad attitude. But it it was a challenge to try and find the little good nuggets in this. Then we go to the mandatory lunch that luckily we had enough money to go with. I mean, it wasn't a lot of money, but when you weren't prepared for it, you weren't prepared for it. Um, Again, really, really trying to see the positive in this. And the buffet was nothing like what you would consider a buffet, probably in most of the United States, maybe other places too. They brought you a piece of whatever meat that you chose when you were picking your options on the way. So you could pick llama, beef, chicken, or an omelet for a vegetarian option. And basically, they brought you on this plate, and then you had to go to a table and serve yourself with whatever was there that you wanted in addition to this. Not the idea of a buffet that I think a lot of people think about. And everything on the table that was supposed to be warm was cold. Rice was cold, the potatoes were cold, the steamed vegetables were cold. I mean, it was what it was. It's $6. What do you expect? But it just didn't go down well when it wasn't your choice. And of course, as we go driving up to the place where there is no other food, of course, we went past several little restaurants and several little stores that we certainly could have exercised that option. But when we were driving there, we were told that there was no other food. So again, we just felt really deceived, and we felt like this isn't at all what we were hoping for. After lunch, we headed out to an adjacent site called Puma Punku. This is where the giant letter H's are. As I walked through the place, I just kept thinking, this archaeological site is brought to you by the letter H. And if you're my age and if you've watched Sesame Street, you understand that reference. So this was exciting. This was another opportunity to get out amongst the archaeological ruins and look at the precision of the rocks and just get a much fuller understanding of the people and the culture and what was going on here and what's a mystery, what happened here that we don't quite understand why it happened. So we started to gather our things and we're heading out, and you guessed it, it started raining and hailing. About little rice size hail was coming down. And now we're pretty glad that we took our umbrellas. So we hop in the minivan and we head over there, which was literally 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And everybody hops out of the van and we head into Puma Punku. And now the rain is starting to pick up and the hail is coming down. It didn't hurt. It's just little tiny rice-sized pieces of hail, but it certainly put a damper on the situation. And we didn't get very far into the archaeological site. And the guide said, "Let's all go back to the van, and I'll tell you all the things that I need to tell you about this site, so we can be warm and dry." Well, this camper did not fall for that. My brain said, I have no idea if I'm ever going to be back in this place again in my life. I want to see it. I want to see what's here. And if I get cold and wet, well, that's okay, because I'm not going to be here again. I'm not going to have another opportunity. And I'd rather be cold and wet and see it than sit in a bus and talk about it and not see it when we're literally right there. So I look around and I realize I am the only person, including Dean, that's out here in the rain. And so I tried to just quickly run around and absorb what I could and film what I could and photograph. So then I scurried back to the van and hopped in. And at that point, we just started driving off, and I realized, oh, we're going back to La Paz. So this was 3 o'clock. And remember when we looked at the website and it said that the departure from Tiwanaku back to La Paz is at 4? Well, I assume this is why they make you stay on the tour, because it isn't a hard time and a hard place where they decide to leave from. So if we had done this on our own and gotten back to the meeting spot at 4, the transportation would have been long gone. So they don't let you do that. And I also get it. If you're running this as a tour and you let people go off willy-nilly, then you don't have control, and then maybe these people never come back. Maybe they went off on their own and they decided, it's going to rain, let's just go back to La Paz, and they don't tell anybody, and then the tour is sitting there waiting and waiting because they don't know that they took off on their own. I really do understand that that's part of running a tour. It just was that this was not presented as a tour, this was presented as transportation. So that's how that went. So about 10 minutes down the road, the rain stopped and the skies cleared up, and we drove back to La Paz. Once we were in La Paz, we were all dropped off at a specific location, and each of us had to find our way home from there. Unlike in the morning where they did individual pickups all over town. So a few of us were saying goodbye and talking to one another, and a few of the other people were really angry and were saying, why couldn't he have waited for 15, 20 minutes? The rain would have stopped and we could have seen the archaeological site and we could have gotten the full experience. But instead they decided to go back to La Paz. And at first I thought, well, you can't just make exceptions and wait out the rain when you don't know how long it's going to be. But then I realized we left at 3 o'clock. and the scheduled time for leaving was 4 o'clock. So they really did have at least a half an hour leeway of saying, we're going to wait here for 15 minutes and see if the rain stops. And then at that point, we're either going to take off, or if the rain stops, we'll go do a quick rundown of it. But they didn't. So, I get that. I get that business is business, but they also chopped off an hour of time that they could have satisfied their customers. So overall, it was a bit of a letdown, and it just, during the day, it was really hard to try and overcome that and say, okay, well, let's make the most of it anyway. We're here. Let's not be grumpy. Let's not tarnish our experience. Thing after thing after thing just kept kind of knocking us down into a bit of a disappointment. So there you have it. That's kind of how the semi DIY get yourself to Tiwanaku and back situation went for us. There's some information here that if you're trying to do the same, at least you have a little more information to pull from. I hope that by sharing our little story of trials and tribulations today, that this will save somebody, even one person, the hassle and the heartache of going through a plan, thinking that you have it nailed down, and it kind of falls apart before you actually get to the good part. This was our experience with a bunch of misinformation, missing information, and quite frankly, a tour that was a big dud. So how about you? Have you experienced something similar? And if so, what were the details? What happened? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I want to say thank you for being here today. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.